Have you ever wondered why a man with a net worth of over $40 million who drives a $200,000 Mercedes Gullwing would choose to live in a rented home? You heard that right. Al Pacino. The star once paid millions per role. A living icon of American cinema is currently living in a house that doesn't even belong to him. And the reason behind it might just surprise you. We know Pacino for the cold, calculating gaze of Michael Corleone, for the raw, explosive rage of Tony Montana. But few have seen the man behind the spotlight, a man who once battled alcohol addiction, who lost close friends to drug overdoses, and who then quietly disappeared from the public eye for decades. So why would a legend like him retreat from the spotlight and never fully return? Stay with us to the end as we uncover the untold truths behind the life of Al Pacino. If you enjoy videos like this, please remember to hit the like button. It really helps us, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Picture a 9-year-old boy standing in a Bronx alleyway, a cheap cigarette in his hand, eyes filled with defiance and longing. No one could have guessed that this boy, poor, lonely, already tangled up in cigarettes and alcohol, would one day become Michael Corleone and stand on the stage at the Oscars to a nearly 2-minute standing ovation. But to get from the Bronx to Hollywood, dreaming alone was never enough. Alfredo James Pacino was born in 1940 in East Harlem when he was just 2. His parents divorced. His mother took him to live in South Bronx with his grandparents, crammed into a small apartment where the two shared a room and lived with almost nothing. The Bronx, back then, was where dreams often died young. Pacino started smoking at 9, drinking by his teens, and soon experimented with marijuana. His friends called him Sonny, a hot-headed kid, quick to fight and impossible to pin down. But beneath all that, he had a secret every afternoon after wandering the streets. He'd stand in front of a mirror, mimicking movie stars, studying their expressions, copying every gesture as if he were living a different life. He once dreamed of becoming a baseball player, but it was the stage that made him feel truly alive. His mother disapproved. They argued eventually. At 17, Pacino left home. He slept on friends' couches, ate when he could, and spent most of his time in public libraries and community theaters. Maybe you've held a dream that no one believed in. Have you ever asked yourself, do I have the courage to chase it, even if I have to do it alone? At 19, Pacino lost his closest friend to a drug overdose. It was the only friend who had always believed he could make it. At the funeral, Pacino didn't say a word, but in silence, he made a vow. I won't die here. I will do something that matters. He would face rejection, doubt, and even be cut out of entire scenes. But in that moment between a crumbling Bronx church and an unshaped dream, a quiet fire was lit. And could a kid once labeled a rebel really become a global legend? That journey began in the very place most people thought would be the end. He was once rejected by the very school that trained Marlon Brando. He was laughed at by audiences for being too deep in character. So what made Al Pacino keep going even when all of New York seemed to turn its back on him? In the early 1960s, during the thriving off-Broadway theater scene, Pacino wandered from one tiny venue to another, looking for a chance, any chance to stand on stage. By day, he worked at the post office, delivered mail, washed dishes. By night, he studied at HB Studio and sometimes slept in rehearsal rooms when he couldn't afford rent. Dinner was often nothing more than stale bread and cold coffee, what he later called a modest meal, but enough to keep the fire lit. In one of his earliest plays, he got so into the role that he broke down in real tears on stage. The audience laughed. They thought he was overacting. After that performance, Pacino nearly quit. He sat alone on the theater steps, script soaked in the rain, thinking, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Have you ever kept going for a dream even when no one around you believed in it anymore? Luckily, someone did believe in him at HB Studio. A teacher named Charlie Lawton saw something rare behind that brooding gaze, a deep, intuitive understanding of emotion. It was Lawton who pulled Pacino back, who helped him realize that truth on stage, even when misunderstood, always matters. 4 years later, Pacino was accepted into the Actors Studio under the mentorship of Lee Strasberg. There, he was introduced to the height of method acting, a discipline that demanded full immersion, where actors lived as their characters, even off stage, in 1960s New York, where acting was a battleground between intellect and emotion. Pacino slowly began to find his own voice. Then, in 1967, the first turning point came. He landed the lead in Awake and Sing in Boston, earning $125 a week, not a small sum for an unknown theater actor. A year later, his performance in The Indian Wants the Bronx brought him to producer Martin Bregman. Bregman not only signed him, but opened the first door to Hollywood. But could that gaze alone win over an industry that had never even heard of him? The answer came in 1971. Francis Ford Coppola, a young director fighting to bring The Godfather to life, chose Pacino to play Michael Corleone. Despite intense opposition from the studio, they wanted a more famous face, but Coppola believed in that quiet, blade-sharp stare, and he fought for it. In 1972, when The Godfather premiered, the entire theater fell silent during the scene where Michael sits in a restaurant, his hand trembling, eyes cold before the moment that will change his life forever. No dialogue, no explanation. Just a look, and Pacino turned from an unknown actor into a force of nature. When Michael Corleone walked onto the screen, the audience didn't just watch, they were stunned. Pacino wasn't just a new name, he had become a style, a presence, a movement. And do you remember the first time someone believed in you, the first time a door opened, not because you were famous, but because someone saw something in you, something you hadn't even seen in yourself? Al Pacino didn't come to Hollywood to be a star. He came because he couldn't live without acting, and that unwavering passion would lead him to heights few have ever reached. When The Godfather premiered in 1972, Pacino was paid just $35,000, a modest sum for a film of that scale. But his portrayal of Michael Corleone turned him from a little-known stage actor into a global phenomenon. With just his eyes and silence, Pacino captured the cold conflict of a man torn between duty and identity, forever shaping the style of American method acting. Over the next 3 decades, he would mark the greatest milestones of an actor's journey. Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, and Justice for All roles that mirrored the fractured soul of post-war America. Scarface 1983, his violent, iconic turn as Tony Montana, now etched into pop culture history. And his crowning achievement, Scent of a Woman 1992, where he played blind-litted Colonel Frank Slade and finally won the Academy Award for Best Actor after multiple nominations. From a high school dropout once dismissed from auditions for being too intense, Pacino rose to become one of the most respected figures in film. By the 1990s, he was earning millions per role, among the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. But more importantly, Pacino never took a role just for the paycheck. He chose characters that had something to say about power, about humanity, about loneliness. To him, success wasn't about rankings. It was when a character finally reached someone somewhere in the dark. Al Pacino doesn't buy mansions. He rents them. It may sound unusual, but for Pacino, real estate isn't a symbol of success. It's simply a place to live quietly in a world already flooded with lights and expectations. He currently lives in a Mediterranean-style villa in Beverly Hills, once owned by famed author Jackie Collins. The home sits at the end of a private lane, behind antique iron gates draped in ivy. This isn't the kind of estate guarded by teams of security. It's the kind of place only someone who's lived through it all would choose: secluded, reflective, and never trying to impress anyone. The 16,000-square-foot home features 8 bedrooms, dark wood-beamed ceilings, a private screening room with deep red velvet chairs, a limestone wine cellar, and a wood-paneled library where Pacino reads scripts and Italian calligraphy. Out back, a mosaic-tiled pool shimmers under the sunset, an image worthy of any film's final scene. His office is simple, a wooden desk, a warm lamp, and a black-and-white photo of his mother, Rose. There's no TV. The only sound comes from an old turntable that plays jazz every Sunday morning. And here's what makes it even more remarkable: Pacino doesn't own this house. Despite the $250,000 a month rental price, he has never purchased luxury real estate in LA or New York. As he once told a friend, "I don't need to own it. I just need to be here while I'm still alive." To many, a house is a possession. To Pacino, it's a stop along the way, a quiet place for reflection, preparation, and performance, not a trophy to be flaunted. Maybe that's why, in a city where everyone's trying to stay, Pacino chooses to pass through, leaving a mark without clinging to anything. There's no flashy car fleet, no vanity plates, no butterfly doors, but inside Pacino's garage, each car speaks softly about taste, age, and the man behind the myth. The standout is his 2015 Mercedes-Benz SLS AMG. With its iconic gull-wing doors and sleek black finish, it's worth around $220,000 on today's market. But to Pacino, it's likely priceless, modeled as a tribute to German engineering legends of the 1950s. It's both classic and commanding. When the doors lift, they evoke the moment Pacino himself rose into the spotlight after The Godfather. Quiet, but impossible to ignore. Next is a 2025 Porsche Cayenne Turbo, a deep gray SUV with matte black leather interior. Priced around $170,000, it's ideal for everyday driving, but still carries the aura of someone who's lived fully through every role. Pacino uses it for studio runs, film sets, or quiet nighttime drives through Los Angeles when the chaos subsides. It's a car for a man with nothing left to prove, just the right comfort, and the kind of silence that lets him think. Then there's the Land Rover Defender 130 2025 model, matte olive green, raw metal finishes, valued at nearly $100,000. It's not a showpiece. It's the vehicle he takes into California's northern hills, where the fog rolls in, paparazzi fade away, and he can revisit old lines in peace. The Defender isn't for flash. It's for those who've endured loss and learned to move slowly. 3 cars, no more, but each one is right for the journey, right for his age, and right for the man he's become. In a world obsessed with more, Pacino quietly chooses less, and somehow, that says everything. If Al Pacino's career is a grand symphony, his personal life is made of quiet notes, warm, steady, sometimes completely silent. He's never married. That surprises many given his history with women like Diane Keaton, Beverly D'Angelo, and Lucilla Polak. But to Pacino, love doesn't require framed photos or formal ceremonies. Love, for him, is when 2 people are close enough to see each other without performance and quiet enough to coexist without needing words. Though he's never married, Pacino is a father of 4. He considers fatherhood the one role he'll never be done playing. With his youngest son, born in 2023 with Noor Alfallah, Pacino, now 83, still changes diapers, rocks the baby to sleep, and watches with quiet wonder as he learns to say dad for the first time. He once said, "I may have played 100 roles, but with my children, I only need to get one thing right: being present." His family life is quiet. No grand birthday parties, no media events. Friends say he prefers cooking dinner himself, taking the kids to Griffith Park to watch the sunset, or sitting together to watch the old black and white films he once loved as a child. It's in these little things that he holds love close. Pacino lives with gentle discipline, not rigid, but intentional. No social media, no after parties. He turns down most interviews. His daily rhythm includes early mornings with a script, spontaneous phone calls to old co-stars, and long afternoons listening to jazz from a vintage record player on the balcony. Even in Beverly Hills, he resists the glitter. When asked once why he hadn't moved to something smaller, Pacino smiled and said, "I need space for the memories." What sets him apart may not be what he has, but what he chooses to keep in a world full of noise. Pacino still lives like he did in the Bronx, simple, focused, and never trying to prove anything but himself. And maybe, at 84, the most precious thing Al Pacino owns is the peace it took him a lifetime to find. Fame can open doors to the world, but it can also cast the longest shadow a performer ever has to walk through. For Al Pacino, the spotlight didn't just shine on the screen at times, it burned straight through him. After The Godfather, Pacino became a global icon, but behind the applause, he began to feel isolated. Each role felt like giving away a piece of his soul, without the time or space to get it back. The 1970s were a time of explosive creativity and unrest in American cinema, but it was also a time when artists easily fell into dangerous paths. Pacino was no exception. Worn down by pressure, he turned to alcohol, then sleeping pills, then drugs. No one knows exactly when the dependence began, only that, while others toasted him from the spotlight, he sat backstage, slumped over a table, eyes bloodshot from exhaustion and insomnia. Have you ever felt like the very things you've achieved are what leave you feeling most empty? In 1977, at age 37, Pacino reached a crossroads. One morning, after yet another sleepless night, he looked at himself in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. There was no trace of Michael Corleone, no shadow of Tony Montana, just a lonely, hollow man, unsure what he was still chasing. He chose to get clean, no announcements, no press. He quietly stepped away from projects, turned to meditation, cut out all stimulants, and lived in seclusion for over a year. Since then, Pacino has remained sober for nearly 5 decades, a rare feat in Hollywood. But the challenges didn't stop there. In Scarface 1983, Pacino pushed his body to its limit. During a shootout scene, he burned his hand on an overheated prop gun, but kept filming. That night, he was hospitalized for dehydration and exhaustion. When the film premiered, critics panned it, calling it violent and morally bankrupt. Yet over time, Scarface became a cultural landmark. Tony Montana became legend. Have you ever sacrificed your health, safety, or time just to defend something no one else seemed to understand? In 2020, during the global pandemic, Pacino contracted COVID-19 and nearly lost his life. For the first time in years, he admitted he was afraid. Not afraid to die, but afraid of leaving things unfinished. Since then, he's turned more toward teaching and returned to the screen in The Irishman and the series Hunters. In his private life, Pacino has also been a subject of media fascination. His breakup with Diane Keaton drew public sympathy. His relationship with Beverly D'Angelo, the mother of his twins, also didn't last. But unlike many public figures caught in the swirl of scandal, Pacino chose silence. No rebuttals, no interviews, just quiet resilience. And in doing so, he outlasted it all. Fame once brought him to the edge, but in that darkness, Pacino found the strength to rise again, not as a star, but as a man. Some people leave behind applause, others leave behind film reels, but Al Pacino, he leaves behind a way of making art that feels lived in, honest, and utterly human. Across a career spanning more than 60 years, Pacino has earned 1 Academy Award, 4 Golden Globes, 2 Tony Awards, and 2 Emmys. He's one of the rare few to conquer all 3 major stages: film, television, and theater. But his legacy isn't found in gold statues. It's in Michael Corleone's eyes, in Tony Montana's heavy breathing, in the gravelly voice of Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade as he shouts, "I'm just getting warmed up." It's in the performances that are now required study in acting schools from New York to London to Tokyo. It's in the way hundreds of young directors still cite Pacino as the standard when talking about raw, unpolished method acting. And it's in the quiet hours he spends at the Actors Studio, where he serves as co-president mentoring young actors with the same dedication once shown to him by Lee Strasberg. Beyond his work in the arts, Pacino has quietly supported numerous charities like the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, Save the Children, and Exploring the Arts. No campaigns, no grand speeches, just quiet donations, a signature, and then back to the work. At 84, he has nothing left to prove, and yet, whether he's on stage or just sitting backstage in the shadows, he still carries one unshakable truth: art only matters if you're willing to live for it. Al Pacino's legacy isn't built on perfection. It lives in the truth he brings to every role, even when that truth is uncomfortable. And maybe that's why he's never gone out of style. What do you hope to leave behind when the lights go out? Something more than wealth or fame. Something that endures even after you're gone. If there's a memory, a lesson, or a moment that ever changed the way you see the world, share it. Because it's often the quiet stories that live the longest.